Is Tehran pursuing an alternative nuclear path based on plutonium? The Revolutionary Guards are threatening, if the American bomb our oil tankers, we will attack their bases and their ships. Hundreds of ships are trapped in the war zone near Hormuz. Questions are rising in Washington around the condition of the Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei. Has he recovered? We will understand that shortly. And today, we'll also dive into the legendary mediator who is returning to manage the negotiations. And we'll bring you all the information about the secret channel to end the war with Iran, which met in Miami over the past 24 hours. And Trump has ordered preparations for a prolonged siege of Iran. According to the Wall Street Journal, the US president ordered the military to prepare a scenario for an ongoing naval blockade. The White House believes that economic pressure will break Tehran, but there is no quick solution on the horizon. And we won't forget to mention that Trump is burning bridges with European allies and taking revenge on those who betrayed America. We'll bring you all the details. I'm Mati Shoshani. Tonight, Yair Pinto is on vacation, and I am replacing him because he also deserves a rest. And we on Boots on the Ground are bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and the whole truth about what is happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. Today is May 10th, and we'll bring you the full report. So let's quickly go over what is happening, and then we'll dive deeper into the details. Iran is getting entangled with the United States and with the entire region. Washington is waiting for Tehran's response to a proposal to end the war. But on the ground, naval clashes, interceptions, and strikes continue around the Strait of Hormuz. So are we heading towards renewed fighting, or towards an agreement, or maybe towards a longer siege? Right now, it seems there is a real need for the American president's Project Freedom, because in the Strait of Hormuz, 20,000 sailors have been stuck for more than 65 days in the Persian Gulf, while food supplies are running out with no rescue in sight. They were caught in the exchange of fire. They watched neighboring ships sink in the Middle East. Look, this is a nightmare for the sailors in the heart of the Persian Gulf. And again, think about this. 65 days of an Iranian siege have turned hundreds of ships into floating prisons. More than 20,000 foreign workers are trapped under missile and drone fire, suffering from hunger, from injuries, and a shortage of medicine. And right now, the American rescue effort, named Project Freedom, has been stopped, while the abandoned sailors describe a reality of despair. And behind the scenes, the Qataris are entering the picture, not because they care about the sailors, but because they care about the oil. While the United States is still waiting for Iran's response, the Prime Minister of Qatar, who met with Vice President Vance, changed his plans and continued to Miami, where he met with Secretary of State Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. And meanwhile, the United States and Iran are now negotiating a one-page memorandum of understanding, a memo meant to bring an end to the war and create a framework for more detailed negotiations. The Qataris are playing a key role in mediating between the sides. As of Saturday afternoon, the White House is still waiting for Tehran's final response. And although Pakistan has been the official mediator between the countries since the beginning of the war, the Qataris are working intensively under the radar. In the White House, they're seen as especially effective mediators with the regime in Iran. Now, the Iranians have not stayed quiet over the past 24 hours. Against the backdrop of the exchange of fire in the Strait of Hormuz in recent days, Iran's Revolutionary Guards threatened that any American attack on Iranian oil tankers and commercial ships would be answered with a harsh attack, that's a direct quote, on one of the American bases in the region and on enemy ships. The spokesman for the Iranian military, Mojtaba Khamenei, threatened that if the enemy attacks Iran again, it will be surprised by new weapons, new methods of warfare, and new battlefields. He said this to an Iranian Tasnim news agency. The spokesman for the National Security and Foreign Policy Committee in the Iranian parliament, Ibrahim Rezai, said, "The period of restraint is over. Any attack on our ships will be answered with a strong and decisive response against American ships and bases. Time is running out, and this is not in America's favor." Contrary to statements in Tehran, claiming that the new supreme leader has recovered and is functioning, a completely different picture is now being revealed. According to American intelligence, Mojtaba Khamenei is suffering from severe burns and is completely isolated, with no access to electronic devices. Despite the injury, he is still involved in shaping the strategy against President Trump. But in Washington, they are wondering whether he has become a puppet of the Revolutionary Guards. And inside Iran, the regime is losing control. The Revolutionary Guards have called on the Iraqis for help. Iraqi forces are taking on important roles in the streets of Tehran, integrating into the local security forces and carrying out strict enforcement. And the war with Iran is exposing a deep crack in the architecture of global security. Trump has decided to withdraw forces from Europe and reduce aid to allies who refuse to cooperate with his demands. At the moment, it appears that the president is continuing an aggressive line that calls Article 5 of the NATO treaty into question. The emerging result is an internal European arms race that could break apart the entire European Union. We'll bring you all the details later in this broadcast. And on the Lebanese front, it seems that the Hezbollah terror organization is worried. Inside the organization, there's fear that it will remain isolated without substantial Iranian backing. Hezbollah fears that a future agreement between Israel and Lebanon could lead the Lebanese government to act against them and attempt to reduce their power inside the country. At the very same time, Hezbollah is making it clear that it is not prepared to give up the weapons in its possession. And in recent days, dozens of Hezbollah infrastructures were attacked, and 10 terrorists were eliminated. The Fire Brigade of Division 91 operated in recent days in southern Lebanon. Strikes were carried out against military buildings, weapons, warehouses, and Hezbollah launchers, while more than 10 terrorists who were operating near IDF forces were all eliminated. By the way, it's important for me to mention this. I want to give a quick update on our previous report about the fact that during the War of the Lions War, the Israeli Air Force operated a forward post deep inside Iraq. That report created a lot of discussion. The goal was to move rescue teams and commando units forward, including Shaldag and Sayeret Matkal, alongside fighters from the Airborne Rescue Unit 669, in case an Israeli Air Force fighter jet was hit and there was a need to rescue an aircrew that had been forced to eject. There's a lot ahead of us, so let's dive into the details. I'm Shoshani, and with me is Yair Pinto. We're on boots on the ground, bringing you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel and the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And 1 second before we begin, I want to call on you to continue spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button, and most importantly, don't forget to look for me, Mati Shoshani, and for Yair Pinto on social media, so you can get our personal view of what it's like to live in Israel under war. And 1 second before we begin, I want to raise the question for a moment. Where is this situation going, and where is the wind blowing? Let's break this down, take a couple of minutes to really understand where we're going. I want to take a couple of minutes to speculate together with you where we're going with all of this. Let's break down the details as they are today, which is Sunday, the 10th of May. First of all, is there a ceasefire? Well, not really. I mean, on paper, there is a ceasefire, but in practice, we're beyond the ceasefire part of this event, let's call it. The second part is are there substantial negotiations? And to that too, I would say, not really. There are not substantial negotiations as we would need to expect to see if we wanted something dramatic to change. I'd also add to that things haven't really changed in recent weeks in the Strait of Hormuz, in the Persian Gulf, or in Iran proper. I mean, the fundamental points of conversation remain static, remain the same, remain stagnant. Let me break them down for you. Are ships traveling freely through the Strait of Hormuz? No, not really. Are the Iranians able to export oil? No, the American blockade works effectively on them. Let's ask another question. Is the blockade on ships parked at Gulf states in front of the Emirates, Dubai, Qatar, Oman, and the rest of them, are they able to move freely? Absolutely not. They're stuck in the Persian Gulf. Add one more thing to that. Are the Iranians able to export oil? Clear no. So in reality, there's a process of absolute stagnation in the situation right now. We're not at full war. Everyone is sort of holding their punches. We're not at a full negotiation. There's nothing that's really progressing. And we're not really going back to change anything. War is not happening. Ceasefire is not happening. We're in this intermediate point of attrition. There are two parallel channels that are taking place here. One is a financial attrition. Both the United States and the Iranians are bleeding money. But to one of those parties, it's substantial. The Iranian regime is losing about $500 million a day in oil revenue. The United States is only financing its war machine, but it's not actually losing money as a country. In fact, if you really dive into the analysis of that, and we've talked about this several times before, you realize that they're actually making more money than before because the global demand for oil is now more focused on US markets than it is on the Iranians, who can no longer sell oil. So that's the financial side of it. But what about the military side? On the military side, we have the same problem that we always meet in asymmetrical warfare. The United States is overwhelmingly more powerful than the Iranians. They've beat them on day 1, 2, 3 of this war. Even Israel, in the initial strikes, beat the Iranian army. So does the war end? Well, no, the war doesn't end. Because even though Israel and the United States are stronger than Iran when it comes to army-on-army warfare, that's not this war. This is a war of asymmetrical nature. It's a guerrilla war, or terrorism war, or the combination of all of them. The Iranians use terrorism to spread fear and to control the region. Their threat is sufficient to prevent ships from trying to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Their little speedboats and their missiles that are launched on them are sufficient to stop any ship from trying to break through the blockade in or out of the Strait of Hormuz, even with American escorts. And again, remember this, twice in the last week, the US has carried very substantial operations. Once it was 2 ships, then it was 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers that travel through. They have a huge amount of air support behind them. They're bombing their way through the Strait of Hormuz, and still that's not enough to open up, in truth, the Strait of Hormuz. And the reason for that is because all it takes is a little rubber boat with some anti-ship rockets on it, with a heavy machine gun on it, with a couple little terrorists from the IRGC to stop a big ship. These big ships are slow, these big ships are heavy, and the ones carrying oil are literally a floating keg of explosive material. So it's understandable that the captains of those ships don't want to brave or risk their lives traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. Where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? It leaves us in a very problematic place where the ceasefire is not really effective. The negotiation is not really progressing. And yet we witness stagnation day in and day out. It gets even worse from the Israeli perspective because Israel is still fighting in Lebanon. Despite the declared ceasefire, the ceasefire is between Israel and the Lebanese government. The Hezbollah terrorist organization, they never stopped fighting. They never stopped firing drones. They've just escalated their attacks on Israeli communities in Israel. That hasn't changed at all. So Israel continues to fight in Lebanon. We continue to be on high alert as it relates to Iran. And really, when you think about the macro image here, global economics, global trade, global treaties between countries, the flow of oil and commodities across the open seas, all of that has a substantial hiccup in the image of the Strait of Hormuz right now. And until that is resolved, the war doesn't truly end. And sadly, being the strongest army in the world, and if it wasn't clear up to this point, the US armed forces are by far the strongest armed forces in the world. That is not enough yet to prevent Iranians from disrupting trade through that strait. And until that is changed, and until the regime in Iran is changed, we don't get to go back to normal life. That is a huge problem. I'm not sure how President Trump is going to be able to circumvent it. I'm not sure what the solution is. Maybe a treaty, maybe NATO, maybe all of the above. One way or another, we're still at war. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed, and the Iranian government, even though it's weakened and despite the beating it's taken, has still been able to disrupt trade and to pose a threat to ships traveling in that region. And until there's an apparent solution, which I want to be clear here, is not a military solution, until there's a diplomatic or a governmental change in Iran or possibly elsewhere in the negotiation, we will not be able to end this war. What do you do with this information? Well, guys, you pray, because there is no other apparent solution. There is no clear way to move forward aside from clearly standing together with our leaders and our countries in praying for the evil of the Iranian regime to be removed and for something better to take place, take over that country. That is the only apparent solution right now. The ceasefire with Iran may be in place, but no one in Israel really believes this is over. The missiles may have stopped, but they've only stopped for now. But the injuries, the trauma, and the need to stay ready, at alert, that hasn't gone anywhere. And through all of this, who was there from the very first moment? Magen David Adom. When the sirens went off, when the rockets hit, their teams were already on the ground, treating the wounded, evacuating the injured, saving lives again and again. And now, even as things quiet down, they don't stop. They're restocking supplies, repairing ambulances, retraining teams, getting ready for whatever comes next. Because they know it will come. But to stay ready, they need support. If you want to make a real difference, go to savelifeisrael.com. Help Magen David Adom stay prepared, stay strong and fast, so they can keep saving lives whatever happens next. Let's continue with the news, guys. A cargo ship was hit by an unidentified launch near Doha, Qatar. A small fire broke out on board. The crew reported no casualties. But in the Gulf, nobody treats this anymore as an isolated incident. In the same window, Kuwait reported drones inside its airspace. The military said they were handled according to procedure. So the question now is not only who fired, the question is whether the ceasefire with Iran still exists on the ground or only in press briefings. Guys, I'm Mati Shoshani, and this is Boots on the Ground. Today, we go deep into the war between Israel and the United States on one side, and Iran, the Revolutionary Guards, and the regional system Tehran has built over decades on the other side. The first arena is at sea, not in Tehran, not Washington, in the Strait of Hormuz. There, for more than 65 days, around 20,000 sailors have been trapped inside a war zone. More than 800 ships are waiting for a simple answer. When will they be allowed to leave? The numbers show the depth of the crisis. More than 30 ships have been hit by Iranian drones and missiles. At least 10 sailors have been killed. Crews are reporting shortages of food, of water, fuel, and medicine. On some ships, crew members with medical conditions have already run out of basic medication. This is not just a maritime crisis. This is strategic pressure. Iran is using the Strait of Hormuz to remind the world that any war with Tehran can quickly move far beyond Iran's borders. President Donald Trump tried to break the blockade through Project Freedom. The goal was to restore commercial movement through the strait under American military protection. The plan included guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, unmanned platforms, and around 15,000 troops. But the operation was frozen after only 36 hours. Soon after, Iran opened fire on American destroyers moving through the strait. The US military responded. Tehran accused Washington of violating the ceasefire, and Trump said the ceasefire was still in effect. On paper, both sides are still talking about de-escalation. At sea, they are already close to shooting at each other again. The Revolutionary Guards are not limiting themselves to vague threats. The commander of their naval force warned that any American strike on Iranian oil tankers or commercial vessels would be met with a severe attack on an American base in the region and on enemy ships. His message was direct. The missiles and drones are ready, and they're waiting for the order. Iran is also expanding the language of threat. In Tehran, officials are already saying that countries that cooperate with American sanctions may face difficulties crossing through Hormuz. Media outlets linked to the Revolutionary Guards have even called for payments from Western companies for underwater internet cables that pass through the area. That sounds technical, but it isn't. Iran is trying to turn the Strait of Hormuz from a shipping route into a tool of control, not only over oil, but over trade, communication, insurance, energy, and perhaps even the speed of decision-making in Washington. That's exactly where diplomacy enters the picture. While the fire moves closer to the water, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met in Miami with Qatar's Prime Minister, Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. A day earlier, Al Thani had met with Vice President J.D. Vance in Washington. He was supposed to return to Doha, but changed courses and continued to Miami. The meeting focused on a short memorandum of understanding, a one-page document meant to open a path towards ending the war and launching more detailed negotiations. The White House is still waiting for Tehran's final answer. Pakistan is considered the official mediator, but Qatar is working under the radar and is seen as especially effective with the Iranian regime. Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are also part of this effort. The goal of the mediators is simple: lower the flames enough to close a deal. The problem is that every shot fired in the Strait of Hormuz pushes everyone one step back. This is the gap that defines this entire war. In closed rooms, they talk about a memorandum of understanding. On the ground, ships are burning, drones are entering airspace, and Gulf states are activating air defense systems. The United Arab Emirates has already reported interceptions of ballistic missiles and drones launched from Iran. Kuwait is reporting drones inside its airspace. A cargo ship near Qatar was hit by an unidentified launch. Each event is small by itself. Together, they show one thing: a ceasefire in the Gulf is a very fragile structure right now. The second arena is inside Iran itself. American intelligence assesses that Mojtaba Khamenei, Iran's new supreme leader, still plays a central role in shaping the war strategy and the negotiations. But there are major questions about his condition. He's not been seen in public since he was badly wounded in the opening strike of Operation Roaring Lion, the same strike in which his father and other senior officials were killed. The latest information points to severe burns on one side of his body, including his face, his arm, his upper body, and leg. He doesn't use electronic devices. Contact with him is done through couriers, written messages, and people who are able to reach him physically. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian claimed he met with him for 2.5 hours. Now, if that's true, it would be the first reported meeting between a senior Iranian official and the leader since his injury. But Washington still has not been able to visually confirm his current location. That creates a deep problem for the regime. If Khamenei is really in control, he is doing it from a near total isolation. If he's not in control, senior Revolutionary Guard figures may be using his name to advance their own line. This is a critical point. Who is Washington actually negotiating with? A wounded leader receiving messages through couriers, or an Iranian president trying to project stability, or perhaps a security system managing the war in the name of a leader who is almost never seen? And inside Iran, the signs of pressure are already visible. Iraqi forces from the Hashd al-Sabi militia are operating in Tehran and in other cities. They're joining security forces, setting up checkpoints, inspecting vehicles, and helping enforce internal rules, including hijab laws. For residents of Tehran, this is not just extra manpower. It feels like internal occupation. People on the streets are seeing foreign fighters, Arabic speakers, who don't know the local language or culture. They're not seen as regular Iranian security forces. Their presence sends a message that the regime no longer trusts itself alone to control the capital city. This is a moral cost. For years, Iran sent militias outward to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Yemen. Now, part of that same system is being brought back inside Iran. It is a mirror image of the Iranian Empire. The force built to expand influence abroad is now needed to maintain order at home. Now, before we continue, take one moment to help us spread the truth. If this report helps you understand what is really happening in the Middle East, click the like button, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next update. Boots on the Ground was built to bring you the reality from the field without unnecessary noise and without filters. The more you share, the more people can understand what stands behind the headlines. Now, the third arena is the nuclear program. A new assessment says American and Israeli strikes have significantly damaged Iran's nuclear capability. At least 6 sites have been hit since the beginning of the confrontation, including enrichment facilities and locations connected to military nuclear activity. According to the assessment, part of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is now located in places where any movement would be easier to detect. The meaning is simple. Iran is still dangerous, but its freedom of action in the nuclear field has been reduced. Any attempt to assemble a crude nuclear capability would now be more complicated, more exposed, and less likely to succeed. Israel sees this as an operational achievement. The chief of staff has already said that Iran's nuclear project suffered a severe blow and was pushed back years. He also spoke about major damage to Iran's missile capability, the removal of hundreds of launchers and missiles, and Israeli intelligence, technological and aerial superiority. Now here, another newly revealed detail matters. During Operation Roaring Lion, the Israeli Air Force operated a forward post inside Iraq. The purpose was clear and practical. If an Israeli fighter jet had been hit over Iran, and if a pilot had been forced to eject over enemy territory, a rescue force would already have been closer to the arena. At that post, teams from Shaldag, Sayeret Matkal, and 669 unit were prepared. Medical units were also positioned with the ability to provide complex emergency care, up to the level of a forward operating room. Most of the ground force was operating by Wing 7 of the Israeli Air Force, which concentrates the Air Force Commando and special units. Towards the end of the operation, there was a serious operational accident. One of the two helicopters took off to move a force, encountered a dust and sandstorm, and tried to land back. Because of poor visibility and human error, the helicopter rolled onto its side and lightly hit a second helicopter. There were no casualties. One helicopter was badly damaged and evacuated for repairs at Tel Nof. The second was repaired quickly by technical crews. This detail matters because it shows what modern war against Iran looks like. Not only aircraft taking off from far away, not only precision missiles, also rescue teams, forward medicine, commandos in depth, and planning for the moment when an air operation can become a ground event inside enemy territory within minutes. Now, according to a military source, when an American fighter jet fell in Iran, Israel even offered to help the Americans with its special unit. This was not symbolic help. It was a practical offer from an ally that had already prepared this capability well in advance. Now, the fourth arena is Lebanon. Hezbollah is watching the war with Iran with concern. Inside the organization, there is fear that it may be left isolated without full Iranian backing. That doesn't mean Hezbollah intends to give up its weapons. Far from it. Hezbollah continues to make clear that its weapons are the foundation of its military, political, and strategic power inside Lebanon. But its situation has changed. In Israel, officials assess that continued talks between Israel and Lebanon could lead to greater pressure on Hezbollah, and possibly even an attempt by the Lebanese government to reduce its power. The talks are expected to continue in Washington, and the United States is making clear that Iran should not have a role in the track unless it is prepared to stop funding and supporting Hezbollah. On the ground, the IDF continues to act. Forces from Division 91 struck more than 40 Hezbollah infrastructures in southern Lebanon over the weekend. The targets included military buildings, weapon depots, a launcher, and additional infrastructure. More than 10 Hezbollah terrorists were eliminated. This sends a double message. Israel is not waiting for a diplomatic arrangement in order to damage Hezbollah's capabilities. At the same time, American diplomacy is trying to use Iran's weakness to build a new equation in Lebanon. And inside Lebanon, public discourse is also changing. More evidence, more videos, more open criticism against the Hezbollah terrorists. What was once said quietly is now being said more loudly and more visibly. For an organization that has relied on fear for years, that is a troubling sign. And this is where all the arenas connect. Inside Iran, the regime is dealing with a wounded leader, 10 streets, and foreign militias inside the capital. In the Strait of Hormuz, it is trying to pressure global trade. In Lebanon, its central proxy fears being left alone. And in Washington, Trump is applying military, economic, and diplomatic pressure while also risking a renewed confrontation in the Gulf. The world sees a ceasefire. The Middle East sees a power test taking place on several layers at the very same time. If Tehran signs a memorandum of understanding, it will try to sell it as survival. If it refuses, it may reopen the door to a broader American and Israeli strike. Now, this war is no longer measured only by the number of strikes. It is measured by a different question. Who wears down first? The Iranian regime, the global economy, or the patience of Washington and Jerusalem? And the question now is clear. Is Iran looking for a way down from the tree, or is it preparing the next round of violence? Keep spreading the truth, guys. Make sure to follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss boots on the ground. Keep looking for us, Mati Shoshani and Yael Pinto on social media, to see life in Israel through our eyes. And let's take the last minutes here to pray. And I want to say this to you guys. I'm not here to pray for you. We're here to pray together. If you have not yet picked up a life of prayer for Israel, let me just remind you that it is biblical. However you read the Bible, wherever you read the Bible, we are commanded to pray for Israel. Not only that, we're commanded also to pray for our leaders. So let's unite here and pray for the safety of the people of Israel, for our men and women in uniform, both on the ground in Israel and wherever they are in the world, possibly in the deserts of Iraq, and for the men and women of the American armed forces. Give them wisdom, give them supernatural protection. And I also want to ask you to pray for our leaders. Whatever you think about them, pray for President Trump, pray for Prime Minister Netanyahu to have supernatural wisdom to protect the people of Israel, the United States, and the free world against the greatest evil of our lifetime, the Ayatollah regime of Iran. Be blessed, guys, and we'll see you all on the next live broadcast.